Welcome everyone, good to see you all. Tonight I'll be reading chapters 4 and 5. Now I'm going to mention this again at the end of the stream. Normally the reading streams are Tuesday and Thursday, but because I have to get up again on the early side this coming Friday, I'm going to do the reading stream Friday evening instead, rather than Thursday, because I'm not sure how long the stream will take, and because I don't know how long it'll take, I'm just going to basically just push it to Friday, so that way I will be able to maintain the schedule. So this week we'll finish on chapters 6 and 7, and then next week we'll basically finish out the second half of Return of the King with chapter 8 on Tuesday and chapter 9 on Thursday. Alright, so basically there's only 9 chapters in part 2. And we'll be getting to the end. We're nearly there. We're just about halfway to the end. At least in this, like, the second half. So basically and yes, start the 6-7 jokes. Ha ha ha. That needs to die. That trend needs to die. Anyway, we're almost there. So, basically, just to recap, the One Ring has been destroyed. And so, basically, we're returning to where we left off with Frodo and Sam. So, chapter 4 is titled The Field of Cormallen. Alright? So, you kind of see what happens post the destruction of the ring. And, like I said, there is a major part, not in this chapter, no, but later on down the road in the reading streams, there's a major part that was left out of the book. If you know what it is, don't spoil anything, but we'll be getting to that next week. Next week we'll be getting to what was left out of the film adaptation. Okay? And I'll give my thoughts on it. It's like not like bad thoughts or anything, but I'll give my perspective on why that was, like, you know, why that was and so forth. But like I said, don't spoil it for anyone who has not read the books. So don't say anything. But anyway, let's just continue on. Thank you for the $5 super chat, Ragfear. Good to see you all. Spoiler: the Butler did it, yeah. So, but speaking of the Butler did it, after Halo: The Fall of Reach, because that's the next book I'll be reading after Lord of the Rings, I'm going to be reading one of my mystery novels, and I've selected Agatha Christie. So I don't care what people say about, you know, people who read Agatha Christie not being gamers or anything like that. I'm going to read one of her mysteries, and I'm thinking one of the ones that has not, at least not one of the ones that has not been made into a film adaptation recently, and that would be Evil Under the Sun. So, that's what I'm thinking after The Fall of Reach. So, anyway, Chapter 4, The Field of Cormallen. Which one are you listening to, Gravy? Chances are I've read it. Yeah, I'll be finishing this before Christmas. So I'll be done with Lord of the Rings by a week from this coming Thursday. And welcome, Matthew. Good to see you all. So, hope you enjoy chapters 4 and 5. All about the hills, the hosts of Mordor raged. The captains of the west were foundering in a gathering sea. The sun gleamed red, and under the wings of the Nazgul, the shadows of death fell dark upon the earth. Aragorn stood beneath his banner, silent and stern, as one lost in thought of things long past or far away. But his eyes gleamed like stars that shine the brighter as the night deepens. Upon the hilltop stood Gandalf, and he was white and cold, and no shadow fell on him. The onslaught of Mordor broke like a wave on the beleaguered hills, voices roaring like a tide amid the wreck and crash of arms. As if to his eyes some sudden vision had been given, Gandalf stirred, and he turned, looking back north where the skies were pale and clear. Then he lifted up his hands and cried in a loud voice ringing above the din, The eagles are coming. Many voices answered, crying, The eagles are coming! The eagles are coming! The hosts of Mordor looked up and wondered what this sign might mean. There came Gwaihir, the Wind Lord, and Lendroval, his brother, greatest of all the eagles of the north, mightiest of the descendants of old Thorondor. He built his eyries in the inaccessible peaks of the encircling mountains when Middle-earth was young. Behind them, in long swift lines, came all their vassals from the northern mountains, speeding on a gathering wind. Straight down upon the Nazgul they bore, stooping suddenly out of the high airs, and the rush of their wide wings as they passed over was like a gale. But the Nazgul turned and fled, and vanished into Mordor's shadows, hearing a sudden terrible call out of the Dark Tower, and even at that moment all the hosts of Mordor trembled. Doubt clutched their hearts. Their laughter failed, their hands shook, and their limbs were loosed. The power that drove them on and filled them with hate and fury was wavering. Its will was removed from them, and now looking in the eyes of their enemies they saw a deadly light and were afraid. Well, yeah, JM. Again, welcome everyone. Then all the captains of the West cried aloud, for their hearts were filled with a new hope in the midst of darkness. Out from the beleaguered hills, knights of Gondor, riders of Rohan, Dunedain of the north, close-serried companies, drove against their wavering foes, piercing the press with the thrust of bitter spears. But Gandalf lifted up his arms and called once more in a clear voice, Stand, man of the West! Stand and wait! This is the hour of doom! And even as he spoke, the earth rocked beneath their feet. Then rising swiftly up, far above the towers of the Black Gate, high above the mountains, a vast soaring darkness sprang into the sky, flickering with fire. The earth groaned and quaked. The towers of the Teeth swayed, tottering, and fell down. The mighty rampart crumbled. The Black Gate was hurled in ruin, and from far away, now dim, now growing, now mounting into the clouds, there came a drumming rumble, a roar, a long echoing roll of ruinous noise. The realm of Sauron is ended, said Gandalf. The Ring-Bearer has fulfilled his quest. And as the captains gazed south to the land of Mordor, it seemed to them that black against the pall of cloud there rose a huge shape of shadow, impenetrable, lightning-crowned, filling all the sky. Enormous it reared above the world and stretched out towards them a vast threatening hand, terrible but impotent. Impotent. For even as it leaned over them, a great wind took it, and was all blown away and passed, and then a hush fell. No more Sauron. The captains bowed their heads, and when they looked up again, behold, their enemies were flying, and the power of Mordor was scattering like dust in the wind. As when death smites the swollen brooding thing that inhabits their crawling hill and holds them all in sway, ants will wander witless and purposeless, and then feebly die, so the creatures of Sauron, orc or troll or beast, spell enslaved, ran hither and thither mindless, and some slew themselves or cast themselves in pits, or fled wailing back to hide in holes and dark lightless places far from hope. So, just to give you a little perspective, not all the orcs die at the end of Lord of the Rings, basically. Like, when you get into the, fourth post this, basically, if you read the appendices, they do hunt down orcs post these events, basically. So, like, they don't all die here. As well as those who made alliances with Sauron. Right. Right. But the men of Rhûn and of Harad, Easterling and Southron, saw the ruin of their war and the great majesty and glory of the captains of the West. And those that were deepest and longest in evil servitude, hating the West, and yet were men proud and bold, in their turn now gathered themselves for a last stand. There you go. Sorry. Hiccuping. Jeez. Of desperate battle. But the most part fled eastward as they could, and some cast their weapons down and sued for mercy. Then Gandalf, leaving all such matters of battle and command to Aragorn and the other lords, stood upon the hilltop and called, and down to him came the great eagle Gwaihir, the Wind Lord, and stood before him. Twice you have borne me, Gwaihir, my friend, said Gandalf. Thrice shall pay for all, if you are willing. You will not find me a burden much greater than when you bore me from Zirak-Zigul, where my old life burned away. I would bear you, answered Gwaihir, whether you will, even were you made of stone. Then come and let your brother go with us, and some other of your folk who is most swift, for we have need of speed greater than any wind, outmatching the wings of the Nazgul. Oh yeah, hounds. The north wind blows, but we shall outfly it, said Gwahir. And he lifted up Gandalf and sped away south, and with him went Landroval and Meneldur, young and swift, and they passed over Udun and Gorgoroth, and saw the land in ruin and tumult beneath them, and before them Mount Doom blazing, pouring out its fire. I am glad that you are here with me, said Frodo, here at the end of all things, Sam. Yes, I am with you, master, said Frodo, laying Frodo's wounded hand gently to his breast. And you're with me, and the journey's finished. But after coming all that way, I don't want to give up yet. It's not like me, somehow, if you understand. Maybe not, Sam, said Frodo, but it's like things are in the world. Hope fails, and end comes. We have only a little time to wait now. We are lost in ruin and downfall, and there is no escape. Well, master, we could at least go further from this dangerous place here, from this crack of doom, if that's its name. Now, couldn't we? Come, Mr. Frodo, let's go down the path at any rate. Very well, Sam. If you wish to go, I'll come, said Frodo. And they rose and went slowly down the winding road, and even as they passed towards the mountain's quaking feet, a great smoke and steam belched from the Samath Noir, and the side of the cone was riven open, and a huge fiery vomit rolled in slow thunderous cascade down the eastern mountainside. Frodo and Sam could go no further. Their last strength of mind and body was swiftly ebbing. They had reached a low ashen hill piled up at the mountain's foot, but from it there was no more escape. It was an island now, not long to endure, amid the torment of Orodruin. All about it the earth gaped, and from deep rifts and pits smoke and fumes leaped up. Behind them the mountain was convulsed. Great rents opened in its side. Slow rivers of fire came down the long slopes towards them. Soon they would be engulfed. A rain of hot ash was falling. They stood now, and Sam, still holding his master's hand, caressed it. He sighed. What a tale we have been in, Mr. Frodo, haven't we? He said. I wish I could hear it told. Do you think they'll say, now comes the story of Nine-Fingered Frodo and the Ring of Doom? And then everyone will hush, like we did when, in Rivendell, they told us the tale of Beren, One Hand, and the Great Jewel. I wish I could hear it, and I wonder how it will go on after our parts. But even while he spoke so, to keep fear away until the very last, his eyes still strayed north into the eye of the wind, to where the sky far off was clear, as a cold blast, rising to a gale, drove back the darkness and the ruin of the clouds. And so it was that Gwahir saw them with his keen, far-seeing eyes, as down the wild wind he came, and daring the great peril of the skies, he circled in the air, two small dark figures, forlorn, hand in hand upon a little hill, while the world shook under them, and gasped, and rivers of fire drew near. And even as he spied them and came swooping down, he saw them fall, worn out, or choked with fumes and heat, or stricken down by despair at last, hiding their eyes from death. Side by side they lay, and down swept Gwahir, and down came Landroval and Meneldur, the swift, and in a dream, not knowing what fate had befallen them, the wanderers were lifted up and borne far away, out of the darkness and the fire. Yeah, Beren Luthien reference. So Beren, B-E-R-E-N. Like I said, you want, like, okay. To, segue a bit, bringing up Beren. Again, you want to read a tale, like, an awesome tale. Read the accounts of Beren and Finrod Fingolfin, alright? And their journey to find the Cimmerals. Which takes them to what's called, well, can't quite remember how to pronounce the actual name, but it translates to the Isle of Werewolves. Finrod is awesome. But basically, yeah, read the accounts of Beren, Finrod. Like, you don't have to read the entire Silmarillion, basically, but read accounts of those characters, and they are truly awesome. Yeah, Nine-Fingered Frodo, basically. So. When Sam awoke, he found that he was lying on some soft bed, but over him gently swayed wide beechen boughs, and through their young leaves sunlight glimmered, green and gold. All the air was full of sweet, mingled scents. So yeah. He remembered that smell, the fragrance of Ithilien. Bless me, he mused, how long have I been asleep? For the scent had borne him back to the day when he had lit his little fire under the sunny bank, and for a moment All else between was out of waking memory. He stretched and drew a deep breath. "Why, what a dream I've had," he muttered. "I'm glad to wake." He sat up and then saw that Frodo was lying beside him, and slept peacefully, one hand behind his head and the other resting upon the coverlet. It was the right hand, and the third finger was missing. Full memory flooded back, and Sam cried aloud, "It wasn't a dream! Then where are we?" And a voice spoke softly behind him, "In the land of Ithilien, and in the keeping of the kings, and he awaits you." With that, Gandalf stood before him, robed in white, his beard now gleaming like pure snow in the twinkling of the leafy sunlight. "Well, Master Samwise, how do you feel?" he said. But Sam lay back and stared with open mouth, and for a moment, between bewilderment and great joy, he could not answer. At last he gasped, "Gandalf, I thought you were dead. But then I thought I was dead myself. Is everything sad going to come untrue? What's happened to the world?" "A great shadow has departed," said Gandalf, and then he laughed, and the sound was like music, or like water in a parched land, and as he listened the thought came to Sam that he had not heard laughter, the pure sound of merriment, for days upon days without count. It fell upon his ears like the echo of all the joys he had ever known. But he himself burst into tears. Then as the sweet rain will pass down a wind of spring, and the sun will shine out the clearer, his tears ceased, and his laughter welled up, and the laughing he sprang from his bed. "How do I feel?" he cried. "Well, I don't know how to say it. I feel, he waved his arms in the air. "I feel like spring after winter, and the sun on the leaves, and like trumpets and harps and all the songs I ever heard." He stopped and turned towards his master. "But how's Mr. Frodo?" he said. "Isn't it a shame about his poor hand? But I hope he's all right otherwise. He's had a cruel time." So, what they kind of do is Theodore dirty in the movie adaptations. They kind of do him a little dirty. "Yes, I am all right otherwise," said Frodo, sitting up and laughing in his turn. "I fell asleep again waiting for you, Sam, you sleepyhead. I was awake early this morning, and now it must be nearly noon." "Noon," said Sam, trying to calculate. "Noon of what day?" "The 14th of the new year," said Gandalf, "or if you like, the 8th day of April, in the Shire reckoning. But in Gondor, the new year will always now begin upon the 25th of March, when Sauron fell, and when you were brought out of the fire to the king. He has tended you, and now he awaits you. You shall eat and drink with him. When you are ready, I will lead you to him." So, again, the Fellowship departs Rivendell on Christmas Day, on December 25th. To give you a time span, the ring is destroyed on March 25th, so 3 months. 3 months. So, Tolkien specifically timed it to coincide with the ring being destroyed on Easter. So the Fellowship departs on the Christmas, and the ring is destroyed on Easter. Alright? "The king," said Sam. "What king, and who is he?" Well, the movies are adaptations, and there are things that are included in the adaptations, and there are things that are omitted from the adaptations. There are liberties taken with the plot. Some I understand, some I disagree with. Some I agree with immensely. So, but I would say, in terms of like an adaptation, they are good. But like I said, there are differences, and I would have to really delve into it to compare and contrast the books and the film adaptations. So, you read basically if you just listen to the reading streams, Matthew, you can, and then watch the movies, you can see the differences. For example, real quick one, Arwen. This is my biggest gripe with the film adaptations. The amount of screen time Arwen has. She's not a major character. We see her in Fellowship of the Ring, and then basically we don't see her again until now. But yet they make her character bigger than what it is in the books. So as far as adaptations, they are good adaptations. But it depends on how depends on what you agree with and disagree with in terms of what was omitted, what was added, and so forth. But anyway, back to the books. The King of Gondor and Lord of the Western Lands, said Gandalf, and he has taken back all his ancient realm. He will ride soon to his crowning, but he waits for you. Who is the King of Gondor? What shall we wear, said Sam, for all he could see was the old and tattered cloths that they had journeyed in, lying folded on the ground beside their beds. The clothes that you wore on your way to Mordor, said Gandalf, even the orc rags that you bore in the Black Land, Frodo, shall be preserved. No silks and linens, nor any armor or heraldry could be more honorable. But later I will find some other clothes, perhaps. Oh yeah, like I said, people who... Again, okay, I'm gonna do a little rant here. People praising Peter Jackson when the Rohirrim movie came out and so forth, like, oh, he's tied to this, and this is going to be good. And like, you don't understand that Peter Jackson, if he'd been left to his own devices, we would have gotten different adaptations of Lord of the Rings. We see that with the Hobbit movies. He was left to his own devices, basically. Him and his partner Fran Walsh and Philippa Boylan were left to their own devices with those movies, and they were mediocre at best compared to the Lord of the Rings adaptations. We have Sir Christopher Lee to thank for reining Peter Jackson in for the Lord of the Rings. No, it was Sir Christopher Lee, Hounds. It was Sir Christopher Lee because Sir Christopher Lee, and I'm saying Sir because he was knighted, so you gotta put respect on that name. He knew Tolkien. He knew Tolkien. He actually, of the cast, knew Tolkien. And he read Lord of the Rings every year, up to the year that he died. It was Sir Christopher Lee Tariel enters the chat. Don't get me started on Tariel. Anyway, back to the reading, Shane. Sorry, I had to do a little rant, but back to the reading. Then he held out his hands to them, and he saw that one shone with light. What have you got there? Frodo cried. Can it be? Yes, I have brought your two treasures. They were found on Sam when you were rescued, the Lady Galadriel's gifts. Your glass, Frodo, and your box, Sam. You'll be glad to have these safe again. When they were washed and clad and had eaten a light meal, the hobbits followed Gandalf. They stepped out of the beech grove in which they had lain, and passed on to a long green lawn, glowing in sunshine, bordered by stately dark-leaved trees laden with scarlet blossom. Behind them they could hear the sound of falling water, and a stream ran down before them between flowering banks, until it came to a greenwood at the lawn's foot, and passed then on under an archway of trees, through which they saw the shimmer of water far away. As they came to the opening in the wood, they were surprised to see knights in bright mail and tall guards in silver and black standing there, who greeted them with honor and bowed before them. And then one blew a long trumpet, and they went on through the aisle of trees beside the singing stream. So they came to a wide green land, and beyond it was a broad river in a silver haze, out of which rose a long wooded isle, and many ships lay by its shores. But on the field where they now stood, a great host was drawn up, in ranks and companies, glittering in the sun. And as the hobbits approached, swords were unsheathed, and spears were shaken, and horns and trumpets sang, and men cried with many voices and in many tongues. Long live the halflings! Praise them with great praise! Quio e Feriane Anan. Algarni Ferianath. Praise them with great praise, Frodo and Samwise. Daur a Borhal. Conin en Anun Eglerio. Praise them, Eglerio. Aleta te, andave letu velament. Letu velament. Praise them. Corma Colindor, Aleta, Terriana. Praise them, the ring bearers, praise them with great praise. And so the red blood blushing in their faces and their eyes shining with wonder, Frodo and Sam went forward and saw that amidst the clamorous host were set 3 high seats built on green turfs. Behind the seats, upon the right, floated, white on green, a great horse running free. Upon the left was a banner, silver upon blue, a ship swan proud, faring on the sea. But behind the highest throne, in the midst of all, a great standard was spread in the breeze, and there a white tree flowered upon a sable field beneath a shining crown and 7 glittering stars. On the throne sat a mail-clad man. A great sword was laid across his knees, but he wore no helm. As they drew near, he rose, and then they knew him, changed as he was, so high and glad of face, kingly, lord of men, dark-haired, with eyes of gray. Frodo ran to meet him, and Sam followed close behind. Well, if this isn't the crown of all, he said, Strider, or I'm still asleep. Yes, Sam, Strider, said Aragorn. It is a long way, is it not, from Bree, where you did not like the look of me. A long way for us all, but yours has been the darkest road. And then, to Sam's surprise and utter confusion, he bowed his knee before them. Taking them by the hand, Frodo upon his right and Sam upon his left, he led them to the throne, and setting them upon... siblings. And setting them upon it, he turned to the men and captains who stood by and spoke, so that his voice rang over all the host, crying, Praise them with great praise. And when the glad shout had swelled up and died away again, to Sam's final and complete satisfaction and pure joy, a minstrel of Gondor stood forth and knelt, and begged leave to sing. And behold, he said, Lo, lords and knights and men of valor unashamed, kings and princes and fair people of Gondor, and riders of Rohan, and ye sons of Elrond and Dunedain of the north, and elf and dwarf and great hearts of the Shire, and all free folk of the west, now listen to my lay, for I will sing to you of Frodo of the 9 Fingers and the Ring of Doom. And when Sam heard that, he laughed aloud for sheer delight, and he stood up and cried, O great glory and splendor, and all my wishes have come true. And then he wept. And all the host laughed, and... my voice just broke there. And all the host laughed and wept, and in the midst of their merriment and tears, the clear voice of the minstrel rose like silver and gold, and all men were hushed. And he sang to them, now in the elven tongue, now in the speech of the west, until their hearts, wounded with sweet words, overflowed, and their joys was like swords. And they passed in thought out to regions where pain and delight flow together, and tears are the very wine of blessedness. And at the last, as the sun fell from the noon and the shadows of the trees lengthened, he ended. Praise them with great praise, he said, and knelt. And then Aragorn stood up, and all the hosts arose. And they passed to pavilions made ready, to eat and drink and make merry while the day lasted. Frodo and Sam were led apart and brought to a tent, and there their old raiment was taken off, but folded and set aside with honor, and clean linen was given to them. Then Gandalf came, and in his arms, to the wonder of Frodo, he bore the sword and the elven cloak, and the mithril coat that had been taken from him in Mordor. For Sam had brought a coat of gilded mail, and his elven cloak all healed of the soils and hurts that it had suffered, and then he laid before them 2 swords. I do not wish for any sword, said Frodo. My phone fell, excuse me. I love when it falls away from where I think it's going to land. Okay. Okay. Technical difficulties. Tonight at least you should wear one, said Gandalf. Then Frodo took the small sword that had belonged to Sam and had been laid at his side in Cirith's Ungol. Sting I gave to you, Sam, he said. No, master, Mr. Bilbo gave it to you, and it goes with his silver coat. He would not wish anyone else to wear it now. Frodo gave way, and Gandalf, as if he were their esquire, knelt and girt the sword belts about them. And then rising, he set circlets of silver upon their heads. And when they were arrayed, they went to the great feast, and they sat at the king's table with Gandalf and King Eomer of Rohan, and the Prince Imrahil, and all the chief captains, and there also were Gimli and Legolas. But when, after the standing silence, wine was brought, there came in 2 esquires to serve the kings, or so they seemed to be. One was clad in the silver and sable of the guards of Minas Tirith, and the other in white and green. But Sam wondered what such young boys were doing in an army of mighty men. Then suddenly, as they drew near, and he could see them plainly, he exclaimed, Why, look, Mr. Frodo, look here! Well, if it isn't Pippin! Mr. Peregrine Took, I should say, and Mr. Merry! How they have grown! Bless me, but I can see that there's more tales to tell than ours. There are indeed, said Pippin, turning towards him, and we'll begin telling them as soon as this feast is ended. In the meantime, you can try Gandalf. He's not so close as he used to be, though he laughs now more than he talks. For the present, Merry and I are busy. We are knights of the city and of the mark, as I hope you observed. At last the glad day ended, and when the sun was gone and the round moon rode slowly above the mists of Anduin and flickered through the fluttering leaves, Frodo and Sam sat under the whispering trees amid the fragrance of fair Ithilien, and they talked deep into the night with Merry and Pippin and Gandalf, and after a while Legolas and Gimli joined them. There Frodo and Sam learned much of all that had happened to the company after their fellowship was broken on the evil day at Parth Galen by Radalos Falls, and still there were always more to ask and more to tell. Orcs and talking trees, and leagues of grass, and galloping riders, and glittering caves, and white towers, and golden halls, and battles and tall ships sailing, and all these passed before Sam's mind, until he felt bewildered. But amidst all these wonders he returned always to his astonishment at the size of Merry and Pippin, and he made them stand back to back with Frodo and himself. He scratched his head. Can't understand it at your age, he said, but there it is, you're 3 inches taller than you ought to be, or I'm a dwarf. That you certainly are not, said Gimli, but what did I say? Mortals cannot go drinking ent draughts and expect no more to come of them than of a pot of beer. Ent draughts, said Sam. There you go about ents again. But what they are beats me. Why, it will take weeks before we get all these things sized up. Weeks indeed, said Pippin, and then Frodo will have to be locked up in a tower in Minas Tirith and write it all down. Otherwise he will forget half of it, and poor old Bilbo will be dreadfully disappointed. At length Gandalf rose. The hands of the king are hands of healing, dear friends, he said, but you went to the very brink of death ere he recalled you. Putting forth all his power, he sent you into the sweet forgetfulness of sleep. And though you have indeed slept long and blessedly, so it is now time to sleep again. And not only Sam and Frodo here, said Gandalf, but you too, Pippin. I love you, if only because of the pains you have cost me, which I shall never forget. Nor shall I forget finding you on the hill of the last battle. But for Gimli the dwarf, you would have been lost then. But at least I know now the look of a hobbit's foot, though it be all that can be seen under a heap of bodies. When I heaved that great carcass off you, I made sure you were dead. I could have torn out my beard, and it is only a day yet since you were first up and abroad again. To bed now you go, and so shall I. And I, said Legolas, shall walk in the woods of this fair land, which is rest enough. In days to come, if my elven lord allows, some of our folk shall remove hither, and when we come it shall be blessed. For a while, a month, a life, 100 years of men. But Anduin is near, and Anduin leads down to the sea. To the sea. To the sea, to the sea, the white gulls are crying. The wind is blowing, and the white foam is flying. West, west away, the round sun is falling. Grey ship, do you hear them calling? The voices of my people that have gone before me. I will leave the woods that bore me. For our days are ending, and our years failing. I will pass the wide waters, lonely sailing. Long are the waves on the last shore falling. Sweet are the voices in the lost isle calling. In Erisea, an elven home that no man can discover, where the leaves fall not, land of my people forever. And so singing, Legolas went away down the hill. Then the others also departed, and Frodo and Sam went to their beds and slept. And in the morning they rose again in hope and peace. And they spent many days in Ithilien. For the Field of Cormallen, where the host was now encamped, was near to Henneth Annwn, and the stream that flowed from its falls could be heard in the night as it rushed down through its rocky gates, and passed through the flowery meads into the tides of Anduin by the Isle of Caer Andros. The hobbits wandered here and there, visiting again the places that they had passed before, and Sam hoped always in some shadow of the woods or secret glade to catch maybe a glimpse of the great Oliphant. And when he learned that at the siege of Gondor there had been a great number of these beasts, that they were all destroyed, he thought it a sad loss. Well, one can't be everywhere at once, I suppose, he said, but I missed a lot, seemingly. In the meanwhile, the host made ready for the return to Minas Tirith. The weary rested and the hurt were healed. For some had labored and fought much with the remnants of the Easterlings and Southrons until all were subdued. And latest of all, those returned who had passed into Mordor and destroyed the fortresses in the north of the land. But at last, when the month of May was drawing near, the captains of the west set out again, and they went abroad, ship with all their men, and they sailed from Caer Andros down Anduin to Osgiliath, And there they remained for one day, and the day after they came to the green fields of the Pelennor, and saw again the white towers under tall Mendeluin, the city of the men of Gondor, last memory of the Western East. That had passed through the darkness and fire to a new day. And there in the midst of the fields they set up their pavilions, and waited the morning, for it was the eve of May, and the king would enter his gates with the rising of the sun. And take a water break before I begin chapter 5. The Steward and the King. Sorry. Around Christmas, a lot of texting happens because of Christmas present buying and all that. Anyway, the Steward and the King. Over the city of Gondor, doubts and great dread had hung. Fair weather and clear sun had seemed but a mockery to men whose days held little hope, and who looked each morning for news of doom. Their lord was dead and burned, dead lay the king of Rohan in their citadel, and the new king that had come to them in the night was gone again to a war with powers too dark and terrible for any might or valor to conquer. And no news came. After the host left Morgul Vale and took the northward road beneath the shadow of the mountains, no messenger had returned nor any rumor of what was passing in the brooding east. When the captains were but 2 days gone, the Lady Eowyn bade the women who tended her to bring her raiment, and she would not be gainsaid, but rose, and when they had clothed her and set her arm in a sling of linen, she went to the warden of the houses of healing. Sir, she said, I am in great unrest, and I cannot lie longer in sloth. Lady, he answered, you are not yet healed, and I was commanded to tend you with special care. You should not have risen from your bed for 7 days yet, or so I was bidden. I beg you to go back. I am healed, she said, healed at least in body, save my left arm only, and that is at ease. That I shall sicken anew, if there is naught that I can do. Are there no tidings of war? The women can tell me nothing. There are no tidings, said the warden, save that the lords have ridden to Morgul Vale, and men say that the new captain out of the north is their chief. A great lord is that, and a healer, and it is a thing passing strange to me that the healing hand should also wield the sword. It is not thus in Gondor now, though once it was so, if old tales be true. But for long years we healers have only sought to patch the rents made by the men of swords, though we should still have enough to do without them. The world is full enough of hurts and mischances without wars to multiply them. It needs but one foe to breed a war, not two, Master Warden, answered Eowyn, and those who have not swords can still die upon them. Would you have the folk of Gondor gather your herbs only, when the Dark Lord gathers armies? And it is not always good to be healed in body, nor is it always evil to die in battle, even in bitter pain. Were I permitted in this dark hour, I would choose the latter. The warden looked at her. Tall she stood there, her eyes bright in her white face, her right hand clenched as he turned and gazed out of his window that opened to the east. He sighed and shook his head. After a pause, she turned to him again. Is there no deed to do? She said. Who commands in the city? I do not rightly know, he answered. Such things are not my care. There is a marshal over the riders of Rohan, and Lord Hurin, I am told, commands the men of Gondor. But the Lord Faramir is by right the steward of the city. Where can I find him? In this house, lady. He was sorely hurt, but is now set again on the way to health. But I do not know. Will you not bring me to him? Then you will know. The Lord Faramir was walking alone in the garden of the houses of healing, and the sunlight warmed him, and he felt life run new in his veins. But his heart was heavy, and he looked out over the walls eastward. And coming, the warden spoke his name, and he turned and he saw the Lady Eowyn of Rohan, and he was moved with pity, for he saw that she was hurt, and his clear sight perceived her sorrow and unrest. My lord, said the warden, here is the Lady Eowyn of Rohan. She rode with the king and was sorely hurt, and dwells now in my keeping. But she is not content, and she wishes to speak to the steward of the city. Do not misunderstand him, lord, said Eowyn. It is not lack of care that grieves me. No houses could be fairer, for those who desire to be healed. And I cannot lie in sloth, idle, caged. I looked for death in battle, but I have not died, and battle still goes on. At a sign from Faramir, the warden bowed and departed. What would you have me do, lady? Said Faramir. I am also a prisoner of the healers. He looked at her, and being a man whom pity deeply stirred, it seemed to him that her loveliness amid her grief would pierce his heart. And she looked at him and saw the grave tenderness in his eyes, and yet knew, for she was bred among men of war, that here was one whom no rider of the mark would outmatch in battle. What do you wish? She said again, and if it lies in my power, I will do it. I would have you command this warden and bid him let me go, she said. But though her words were still proud, her heart faltered, and for the first time she doubted herself. She guessed that this tall man, both stern and gentle, might think her merely wayward, like a child that has not the firmness of mind to go on with a dull task to the end. I myself am in the warden's keeping, answered Faramir, nor have I yet taken up my authority in the city. But had I done so, I should still listen to his counsel, and should not cross his will in matters of his craft, unless in some great need. But I do not desire healing, she said. I wish to ride to war like my brother Éomer, or better like Theoden the king, for he died and has both honor and peace. It is too late, lady, to follow the captains, even if you have the strength, said Faramir. But death in battle may come to us all yet, willing or unwilling. You will be better prepared to face it in your own manner, if while there is still time you do as the healer commanded. You and I must endure the patience, the hours of waiting. She did not answer, but as he looked at her, it seemed to him that something in her softened, as though a bitter frost were yielding at the first faint presage of spring. A tear sprang in her eye and fell down her cheek, like a glistening raindrop. Her proud head drooped a little, then quietly more as if speaking to herself than to him. But the healers would have me lie abed 7 days yet, she said, and my window does not look eastward. Her voice was now that of a maiden young and sad. Faramir smiled, though his heart was filled with pity. Your window does not look eastward, he said. Then that can be amended. In this I will command the warden. If you will stay in this house, in our care, lady, and take your rest, then you shall walk in this garden in the sun, as you will, and you shall look east, whither all our hopes have gone. And here you will find me, walking and waiting, and also looking east. It would ease my care if you would speak to me, or walk at whiles with me. Then she raised her head and looked him in the eyes again, and a color came in her pale face. How should I ease your care, my lord, she said, and I do not desire the speech of living men. Would you have my plain answer, he said. I would. Then, Éowyn of Rohan, I say to you that you are beautiful. In the valleys of our hills there are flowers fair and bright, and maidens fairer still, but neither flower nor lady have I seen till now in Gondor so lovely and so sorrowful. It may be that only a few days are left ere darkness falls upon our world. When it comes, I hope to face it steadily. But it would ease my heart if while the sun yet shines, I could see you still. For you and I have both passed under the wings of the shadow, and the same hand drew us back. Alas, not me, lord, she said. Shadow lies on me still. Look not to me for healing. I am a shield maiden, and my hand is ungentle. But I thank you for this at least, that I need not keep to my chamber. I will walk abroad by the grace of the steward of the city. And she did him a courtesy, and walked back to the house. But Faramir for a long while walked alone in the garden, and his glance now strayed rather to the house than to the eastward hills. When he returned to his chamber, he called for the warden, and heard all that he could tell of the Lady of Rohan. But I doubt not, lord, said the warden, that you would learn more from the halfling that is with us. For he was in the riding of the king, and with the lady at the end, they say. And so Merry was sent to Faramir, and while that day lasted, they talked long together. And Faramir learned much, more even than Merry put into words. And they thought that he understood now something of the grief and unrest of Éowyn of Rohan. And in the fair evening, Faramir and Merry walked in the garden, but she did not come. But in the morning, as Faramir came from the houses, he saw her, as she stood upon the walls, and she was clad all in white, and gleamed in the sun. And he called to her, and she came down, and they walked on the grass or sat under the green tree together, now in silence, now in speech. And each day after they did likewise. And the warden looking from his window was glad in heart, for he was a healer, and his care was lightened. And certain it was that, heavy as was the dread and foreboding of those days upon the hearts of men, still these two of his charges prospered and grew daily in strength. And so the 5th day came since Lady Éowyn went first to Faramir, and they stood now together once more upon the walls of the city and looked out. No tidings had yet come, and all hearts were darkened. The weather, too, was bright no longer. It was cold. The wind that had sprung up in the night was blowing now keenly from the north, and it was rising, but the lands about looked grey and drear. They were clad in warm raiment and heavy cloaks, and over all the Lady Awen wore a great blue mantle of the color of deep summer night, and it was set with silver stars about hem and throat. Faramir had sent for this robe and had wrapped it about her, and he thought that she looked fair and queenly indeed as she stood there at his side. The mantle was wrought for his mother, Finduilas of Emroth, who died untimely, and was to him but a memory of loveliness in far days and of his first grief. And her robe seemed to him raiment fitting for the beauty and sadness of Eowyn. But she now shivered beneath the starry mantle, and she looked northward, above the great hither lands, into the eye of the cloud, wind far away. The sky was hard and clear. "What do you look for, Eowyn?" said Faramir. "Does not the black gate lie yonder?" said she. "And must he not now be come thither? It is 7 days since he rode away." Sorry, no. 7 days, said Faramir, but think not ill of me if I say to you, they have brought me both joy and a pain that I have never thought to know. Joy to see you, but pain because now the fear and doubt of this evil time are grown dark indeed. Eowyn, I would not have this world end now, or lose so soon what I have found. Lose what you have found, Lord, she answered, but she looked at him gravely, and her eyes were kind. I know not what in these days you have found that you could lose. But come, my friend, let us not speak of it. Let us not speak at all. I stand upon some dreadful brink, and it is utterly dark in the abyss before my feet. But whether there is any light behind me I cannot tell, for I cannot turn yet. I wait for some stroke of doom. Yes, we wait for the stroke of doom, said Faramir, and they said no more, and it seemed to them as they stood upon the wall that the wind died, and the light failed, and the sun was bleared, and all the sounds within the city or in the lands about were hushed. Neither wind nor voice, nor bird call, nor rustle of leaf, nor their own breath could be heard. The very beating of their hearts were stilled. Time halted. Yes, sinuses. And as they stood so, their hands met and clasped, though they did not know it. And still they waited for they knew not what. Then presently it seemed to them that above the ridges of the distant mountains, another vast mountain of darkness rose, towering up like a wave that should engulf the world. And about it lightnings flickered, and then a tremor ran through the earth, and they felt the walls of the city quiver. A sound like a sigh went up from all the lands about them, and their hearts beat suddenly again. It reminds me of Numenor, said Faramir, and wondered to hear himself speak. Of Numenor, said Eowyn? Yes, said Faramir, of the land of Westernese that foundered, and of the great dark wave climbing over the green lands and above the hills, and coming on, darkness unescapable. I often dream of it. Then you think that darkness is coming, said Eowyn? Darkness unescapable? And suddenly she drew close to him. No, said Faramir, looking into her face. It was but a picture in the mind. I do not know what is happening. The reason of my waking mind tells me that the great evil has befallen, and we stand at the end of days. But my heart says nay, and all my limbs are light, and the hope and joy are come to me that no reason can deny. Eowyn, Eowyn, White Lady of Rohan, in this hour I do not believe that any darkness will endure. And he stooped and kissed her brow. And so they stood on the walls of the city of Gondor, and a great wind rose and blew, and their hair, raven and golden, streamed out, mingling in the air. And the shadow departed, and the sun was unveiled, and light leaped forth, and the waters of Anduin shone like silver, and in all the houses of the city men sang for the joy that welled up in their hearts, from what source they could not tell. And before the sun had fallen far from the noon out of the east, there came a great eagle flying, and he bore tidings beyond hope from the lords of the west, crying, Sing now, ye people of the Tower of Anor, for the realm of Sauron is ended forever, and the dark tower is thrown down. Sing and rejoice, ye people of the Tower of Guard, for your watch hath not been in vain, and the black gate is broken, and your king hath passed through, and he is victorious. Sing and be glad, all ye children of the west, for your king shall come again, and he shall dwell among you, and all the days of your life. And the tree that was withered shall be renewed, and he shall plant it in the high places, and the city shall be blessed. Sing, all ye people. And the people sang in all the ways of the city. We'll take another quick water break. Let's see. Okay, a few more pages left in chapter 5. Alright. The days that followed were golden, and spring and summer joined and made revel together in the fields of Gondor. And tidings now came by swift riders from Caer Andros of all that was done, and the city was made ready for the coming of the king. Mary was summoned and rode away with the wains that took store of goods to Osgiliath, and thence by ship to Caer Andros. But Faramir did not go, for now being healed he took upon him his authority and his stewardship, although it was only for a little while, and his duty was to prepare for one who should replace him. And Eowyn did not go, though her brother sent word begging her to come to the Field of Cormallen. And Faramir wondered at this, but he saw her seldom, being busy with many matters, and she dwelt still in the houses of healing, and walked alone in the garden, and her face grew pale again, and it seemed that in all the city she only was ailing and sorrowful. And the warden of the houses was troubled, and he spoke to Faramir. Then Faramir came and sought her, and once more they stood on the walls together, and he said to her, Eowyn, why do you tarry here, and do not go to the rejoicing of Cormallen beyond Caer Andros, where your brother awaits you? And she said, do you not know? But he answered, 2 reasons there may be, but which is true I do not know. And she said, I do not wish to play at riddles, speak plainer. Then if you will have it so, lady, he said, you do not go because only your brother called for you, and you look on Lord Aragorn, Elendil's heir, and his triumph would now bring you no joy, or because I do not go, and you desire still to be near me. And maybe for both these reasons, and you yourself cannot choose between them. Eowyn, do you not love me, or will you not? Do you love me, or will you not? I wish to be loved by another, she answered, but I desire no man's pity. That I know, he said. You desired to have the love of the Lord Aragorn, because he was high and you wished to have renown and glory, and to be lifted far above the mean things that crawl on the earth. And as a great captain may to a young soldier, he seemed to you admirable. For he is a lord among men, the greatest that now is. When he gave you only understanding and pity, then you desired to have nothing, unless a brave death in battle. Look at me, Eowyn. And Eowyn looked at Faramir long and steadily, and Faramir said, do not scorn pity that is the gift of a gentle heart, Eowyn, but I do not offer you my pity, for you are a lady high and valiant, and have yourself won renown that shall not be forgotten. And you are a lady beautiful, I deem, beyond even the words of the elven tongue to tell. And I love you. Once I pitied your sorrow, but now, were you sorrowless, without fear or any lack, were you the blissful queen of Gondor, still I would love you. Eowyn, do you not love me? Then the heart of Eowyn changed, or else at last she understood it, and suddenly her winter passed, and the sun shone on her. I stand in Minas Anor, the tower of the sun, she said, and behold, the shadow has departed. I will be a shield maiden no longer, nor vie with the great riders, nor take joy only in the songs of slaying. I will be a healer, and love all things that grow and are not barren. And again she looked at Faramir. No longer do I desire to be a queen, she said. Then Faramir laughed merrily. That is well, he said, for I am not a king. Yet I will wed with the White Lady of Rohan if it will be her will. And if she will, then let us cross the river, and in happier days let us dwell in the fair Ithilien, and there make a garden. All things will grow with joy there if the White Lady comes. Then must I leave my own people, man of Gondor, she said. And would you have your proud folk say of you, there goes a lord who tamed a wild shield maiden of the north. Was there no woman of the race of Numenor to choose? I would, said Faramir, and he took her in his arms and kissed her under the sunlit sky. And he cared not that they stood high upon the walls, in the sight of many. And many indeed saw them, in the light that shone about them as they came down from the walls, and went hand in hand to the houses of healing. And to the warden of the houses Faramir said, here is the Lady Eowyn of Rohan, and now she is healed. And the warden said, then I release her from my charge, and bid her farewell, and may she suffer never hurt nor sickness again. I commend her to the care of the steward of the city, until her brother returns. Where the white women at? Yeah. But Eowyn said, yet now that I have leave to depart, I would remain, for this house has become to me of all dwellings the most blessed, and she remained there until King Eomer came. All things were now made ready in the city, and there was great concourse of people, for the tidings had gone out into all parts of Gondor, from Min Rimmon even to Pinnith Gelen, and the far coast of the sea. And all that could come to the city made haste to come. And the city was filled again with women and fair children that returned to their homes laden with flowers. And from Dol Amroth came the harpers that harped most skillfully in all the land. And there were players upon viols, and upon flutes, and upon horns of silver, and clear-voiced singers from the vales of Lebanon. At last an evening came when from the walls the pavilions could be seen upon the field, and all night lights were burning as men watched for the dawn. And when the sun rose in the clear morning above the mountains in the east, upon which shadows lay no more, then all the bells rang, and all the banners broke and flowed in the wind. And upon the white tower of the citadel, the standard of the stewards, bright argent, like snow in the sun, bearing no charge nor device, was raised over Gondor for the last time. Now the captains of the west led their hosts towards the city, and folk saw them advance in line upon line, flashing and glinting in the sunrise and rippling like silver. And so they came before the gateway and halted a furlong from the walls. As yet no gates had been set up again, but a barrier was laid across the entrance to the city, and there stood men at arms in silver and black, with long swords drawn. Before the barrier stood Faramir the steward, and Hurin, warden of the keys, and other captains of Gondor, and the Lady Eowyn of Rohan with Elfhelm the marshal, and many knights of the Mark. And upon either side of the gate was a great press of fair people in raiment of many colors and garland of flowers. So now there was a wide space before the walls of Minas Tirith, and it was hemmed in upon all sides by the knights and the soldiers of Gondor and of Rohan, and by the people of the city and of all parts of the land. A hush fell upon all as out from the host stepped the Dunedain in silver and grey, and before them came walking slow the Lord Aragorn. He was clad in black mail, girt with silver, and he wore a long mantle of pure white, clasped at the throat with a great jewel of green that shone from afar. But his head was bare, save for a star upon his forehead, bound by a slender fillet of silver. With him were Eomer of Rohan and the Prince Imrahil, and Gandalf robed all in white, and 4 small figures that many men marveled to see. Nay, cousin, they are not boys, said Eoreth to her kinswoman from the Imolath Melui, who stood beside her. Those are Periane, out of the far country of the Halflings, where they are princes of great fame, it is said. I should know, for I had one to tend in the houses. They are small, but they are valiant. Why, cousin, one of them went with only his esquire into the Black Country, and fought with the Dark Lord all by himself, and set fire to his tower, if you can believe it. At least that is the tale in the city. That will be the one that walks with our Elfstone. They are dear friends, I hear. Now he is a marvel, the Lord Elfstone. Not too soft in his speech, mind you, but he has a golden heart, as the saying is. And he has the healing hands. The hands of the king are the hands of a healer, I said. And that was how it was all discovered. And Mithrandir, he said to me, Eoreth, men will long remember your words. And, yeah, that's the story going. All by himself, he took on the Dark Lord. But Eoreth was not permitted to continue the instruction of her kinswoman from the country, for a single trumpet rang, and a dead silence followed. Then forth from the gate went Faramir with Hurin of the keys, and no other, save that behind them walked 4 men in the high helms and armor of the citadel, and they bore a great casket of black Lebethron, bound with silver. Faramir met Aragorn in the midst of those who there assembled, and he knelt, and said, The last steward of Gondor begs leave to surrender his office. Sinuses. And he held out a white rod, but Aragorn took the rod and gave it back, saying, That office is not ended, and it shall be thine and thy heirs, as long as my line shall last. Do now thy office. Then Faramir stood up and spoke in a clear voice. Men of Gondor, hear now the steward of this realm. Behold, one who has come to claim the kingship at last. Here is Aragorn, son of Arathorn, chieftain of the Dunedain of Arnor, captain of the host of the west, bearer of the star of the north, wielder of the sword reforged, victorious in battle, whose hands bring healing to the Elfstone. Elisar of the line of Valandil, Isildur's son, Elendil's son of Numenor. Shall he be king and enter into the house and dwell here? Or dwell there? And all the hosts and all the people cried, Yea, with the one voice. And Eoreth said to her kinswoman, This is just a ceremony such as we have in the city, cousin, for he has already entered, as I was telling you, and he spoke, and he said to me. And then again she was obliged to silence, for Faramir spoke again. Men of Gondor, the Lord Masters tell that it was the custom of old that the king should receive the crown from his father ere he died, or if that might not be, then he should go alone and take it from the hands of his father in the tomb where he was laid. But since things must now be done otherwise, using the authority of the steward, I have today brought hither from Rathdunin the crown of Arnor, the last king, whose days passed in the time of our long fathers of old. Well, he is from the line of Isildur, so yes. Then the guard stepped forward, and Faramir opened the casket, and he held up an ancient crown. It was shaped like the helm of the guards of the citadel, save that it was loftier, and it was all white, and the wings at either side were wrought of pearl and silver in the likeness of the wings of a seabird. For it was the emblem of kings who came over the sea, and 7 gems of adamant were set in the circlet, and upon its summit was set a single jewel, the light of which went up like a flame. Then Aragorn took the crown and held it up and said, Et Irello Andorena Utulian, Sinom Maravan Ar Eldinyar Ten Ambar Mata. And those were the words that Elendil spoke when he came up out of the sea on the wings of the wind. Out of the great sea to Middle-earth I come. In this place I will abide, and my heirs unto the ending of the world. Then, to the wonder of many, Aragorn did not put the crown upon his head, but gave it back to Faramir and said, By the labor and valor of many I have come into my inheritance. In token of this, I would have the ring-bearer bring the crown to me, and let Mithrandir set it upon my head, if he will. For he has been the mover of all that has been accomplished, and this is his victory. Then Frodo came forward and took the crown from Faramir, and bore it to Gandalf. And Aragorn knelt, and Gandalf set the white crown upon his head, and said, Now come the days of the king, and may they be blessed while the thrones of the Valar endure. But when Aragorn rose, all that beheld him gazed in silence, for it seemed to them that he was revealed to them now for the first time. Tall as the sea kings of old, he stood above all that were near. Ancient of days he seemed, and yet in the flower of manhood. And wisdom sat upon his brow, and strength and healing were in his hands. And the light was about him. And then Faramir cried, Behold the king! And in that moment all the trumpets were blown, and the king Elisar went forth, and came to the barrier, and Hurin of the keys thrust it back. And amid the music of harp and of the viol, and of flute, and the singing of clear voices, the king passed through the flower-laden streets, and came to the citadel, and entered in. And the banner of the tree and of the stars was unfurled upon the topmost tower, and the reign of King Elisar began, of which many songs have told. In his time the city was made more fair than it had ever been, even in the days of its first glory, and it was filled with trees and with fountains, and its gates were wrought of mithril and steel, and the streets were paved with white marble, and the folk of the mountain labored in it, and the folk of the wood rejoiced to come there. And all was healed and made good, and the houses were filled with men and women and the laughter of children. And no window was blind, nor any courtyard empty. And after the ending of the third age of the world into the new age, it preserved the memory and the glory of the years that were gone. We're in the third age now. So, what marks the end of the second age and the beginning of the third age was the last alliance of elves and men. That's when the ring was cut from Sauron's hand. When Elendil and Gil-galad died. They both died during that last alliance. So, that was marked the end of the second age and the beginning of the third age. Now we're near the end of the third age. So we're in the third age. So like when you hear that, that's like those are the years that we're in. That's where the Lord of the Rings takes place. In the days that followed his crowning, the king sat on his throne in the hall of the kings and pronounced his judgments. And embassies came from many lands and peoples from the east and the south, and from the borders of Morkwood and from Dunland in the west. And the king pardoned the Easterlings that had given themselves up and sent them away free. And he made peace with the peoples of Harad, and the slaves of Mordor he released and gave to them all the lands about Lake Núrinen to be their own. And there were brought for him many to receive his praise and reward for their valor. And last the captain of the guard brought to him Baragon to be judged. And the king said to Baragon, Baragon, by your sword blood was spilled in the hallows, where that is forbidden. Also, you left your post without leave of lord or of captain. For these things of old, death was a penalty. Now, therefore, I must pronounce your doom. All penalty is remitted for your valor in battle, and so more because all that you did was for the love of the Lord Faramir. Nonetheless, you must leave the guard of the citadel, and you must go forth from the city of Minas Tirith. Then the blood left Baragon's face, and he was stricken to the heart and bowed his head. But the king said, So it must be, for you are appointed to the White Company, the guard of Faramir, Prince of Ithilien, and you shall be his captain, and dwell in Emin Arnon in honor and peace, and in the service of him for whom you risked all to save him from death. And then Baragon, perceiving the mercy and justice of the king, was glad, and kneeling kissed his hand, and departed in joy and content. And Aragorn gave to Faramir Ithilien to be his princedom, and bade him dwell in the hills of Emin Arnon, within sight of the city. For, said he, Minas Ithil in Morgul Vale shall be utterly destroyed, and though it may be time to come, though in time to come be made clean, no man may dwell there for many long years. And last of all, Aragorn greeted Eomer of Rohan, and they embraced. And Aragorn said, "Between us there can be no word of giving or taking, nor of reward, for we are brethren." And happy hour did the Earl ride from the north, and never has any league of people been more blessed, so that neither has ever failed the other, nor shall fail. Now, as you know, we have laid Theoden the Renowned in a tomb in the Hollows, and there he shall lie forever among the kings of Gondor, if you will. Or if you desire it, we will come to Rohan and bring him back to rest with his own people. And Eomer answered, "Since the day when you rose before me out of the green grass of the downs, I have loved you, and that love shall not fail. But now I must depart for a while to my own realm, where there is much to heal and set in order. But as for the fallen, when all is made ready, we will return for him. But here let him sleep for a while." And Eowyn said to Faramir, "Now I must go back to my own land and look on it once again, and help my brother in his labor. For when one whom I long loved as a father is laid at last to rest, I will return." So the glad days passed, and on the 8th day of May, the riders of Rohan made ready, and rode off by the north way, and with them went the sons of Elrond. All the roads was lined with people to do them honor and praise them, from the gates of the city to the walls of the Pelennor. Then all others that dwelt afar went back to their homes, rejoicing. But in the city there was labor of many willing hands to rebuild and renew, and to remove all the scars of war and the memory of darkness. The hobbits still remained in Minas Tirith with Legolas and Gimli, for Aragorn was loath for the fellowship to be dissolved. "At last all such things must end," he said. "But I would have you wait a little while longer, for the end of the deeds that you have shared has not yet come. A day draws near that I have looked for in all the years of my manhood, and when it comes I would have my friends beside me." But of that day he would say no more. In those days, the companions of the Ring dwelt together in a fair house with Gandalf, and they went to and fro as they wished. And Frodo said to Gandalf, "Do you know what this day is that Aragorn speaks of? For we are happy here, and I do not wish to go, but the days are running away, and Bilbo is waiting, and the Shire is my home." "As for Bilbo," said Gandalf, "he is waiting for the same day, and he knows what keeps you. As for the passing of the days, it is now only May, and high summer is not yet in. And though all things may seem changed, as if an old age of the world has gone by, yet to the trees and the grass it is less than a year since you set out." "Pippin," said Frodo, "didn't you say that Gandalf was less close than of old? He was weary of his labors then, I think. Now he is recovering." And Gandalf said, "Many folk like to know beforehand what is to be set on the table. But those who have labored to prepare the feast like to keep their secret, for wonder makes the words of praise louder. And Aragorn himself waits for a sign." Then came a day when Gandalf could not be found, and the companions wondered what was going forward. But Gandalf took Aragorn out from the city by night, and he brought him to the southern feet of Mount Mindolluin. And there they found a path made in ages past that few now dared to tread, for it led up to the mountain to a high hollow where only the kings had been wont to go. And they went up by steep ways until they came to a high field below the snows that clad the lofty peaks, and looked down over the precipice that stood behind the city. And standing there they surveyed the lands, for the morning was come, and they saw the towers of the city far below them, like white pencils, touched by the sunlight, and all the vale of Anduin was like a garden, and the mountains of shadow were veiled in a golden mist. Upon the one side their sight reached to the grey Emyn Wheel, and the glint of Rauros was like a star twinkling far off, and upon the other side they saw the river like a ribbon laid down to Peligrir, and beyond that was a light on the hem of the sky that spoke of the sea. There's Lost Tales. There's Book of Lost Tales. There's Histories of Middle Earth. So there are accounts, just not like complete, necessarily long stories of other parts of Middle Earth, like the Easterlings and Harad. Like there was one tale. I'm nearly done with this chapter. There's one tale that where people speculate is the origin, so to speak, of the mouth of Sauron. So there are accounts. And Gandalf said, "This is your realm, and the heart of the greater realm that shall be. The third age of the world is ended, and the new age is begun, and it is your task to order its beginning and to preserve what may be preserved. For though much has been saved, much must now pass away, and the power of the three rings is also is ended. And all the lands that you see, and those that lie round about them, shall be dwellings of men. For the time comes that the dominion of men and the elder of kindred shall fade or depart." "I know it well, dear friend," said Aragorn, "but I would still have your counsel." "Not for long now," said Gandalf. "The third age was my age. I was the enemy of Sauron, and my work is finished. I shall go soon. The burden must lie upon you and your kindred." "But I shall die," said Aragorn, "for I am a mortal man, and though, being what I am, and of the race of the West unmingled, I shall have life far longer than other men, yet that is but a little while. And when those who are now in the wombs of women are born and have grown old, I too shall grow old. And who then shall govern Gondor, and those who look to the city as to their queen, if my desire be not granted? The tree in the court of the fountain is still withered and barren. When shall I see sign that it will ever be otherwise? Turn your face from the green world, and look where all seems barren and cold," said Gandalf. Then Aragorn turned, and there was a stony slope behind him, running down from the skirts of the snow, and as he looked he was aware that alone there in the waste of growing things stood. And he climbed to it, and saw that out of the very edge of the snow there sprang a sapling tree, no more than 3 foot high. Already it had put forth young leaves, long and shapely, dark above and silver beneath, and upon its slender crown it bore one silver cluster of flowers, whose white petals shone like the sunlit snow. Then Aragorn cried, "Yea, Utvianes, I have found it. Lo, here is a scion of the eldest of trees. But how comes it here? For it is not itself yet 7 years old." And Gandalf coming looked at it, and said, "Verily this is a sapling of the line of Nimloth the Fair, and that was a seedling of Galathilium, and that fruit of Teliperion, of many names, the eldest of trees. Who shall say how it comes here in the appointed hour? But this is an ancient hollow, and ere the kings failed or the tree withered in the court, a fruit must have been set here. For it is said that though the fruit of the tree comes seldom to ripeness, yet the life within may then lie sleeping through many long years, and none can foretell the time in which it will awake. Remember this, for if ever a fruit ripens, it should be planted, lest the line die out of the world. Here it has lain hidden on the mountain, even as the race of Elendil lay hidden in the waste of the north. Yet the line of Nimloth is older far than your line, King Elisar." Then Aragorn laid his hand gently to the sapling, and lo, it seemed to hold only lightly to the earth, and it was removed without hurt, and Aragorn bore it back to the citadel. Then the withered tree was uprooted, but with reverence, and they did not burn it, but laid it to rest in the silence of Rath Dinen. And Aragorn planted the new tree in the court by the fountain, and swiftly and gladly it began to grow. And when the month of June entered, and it was laden with blossom. "The sign has been given," said Aragorn, "and the day is not far off." And he set watchmen upon the walls. It was the day before midsummer when messengers came from the Emondin to the city, and they said there was a riding of fair folk out of the north. And they drew near to the walls of the Pelennor, and the king said, "At last they have come. Let all the city be made ready." Upon the very eve of midsummer, when the sky was blue as sapphire and the white stars opened in the east, but the west was still golden, and the air was cool and fragrant, the riders came down from the north way to the gates of Minas Tirith. First rode Elrohir and Eladon with a banner of silver, and then came Glorfindel and Erestor and all the household of Rivendell, and after them came the Lady Galadriel and Celeborn, Lord of Lothlorien, riding upon white steeds, and with them many fair folk of their land, great cloaked with white gems in their hair. And last came Master Elrond, mighty among elves and men, bearing the scepter of Anúminas, and beside him upon a grey palfrey rode Arwen his daughter, Evanstar of her people. And Frodo, when he saw her come glimmering in the evening, with stars on her brow and a sweet fragrance about her, was moved with great wonder, and he said to Gandalf, "At last I understand why we have waited. This is the ending. Now, not day only shall be beloved, but night shall be beautiful and blessed, and all its fears pass away." Then the king welcomed his guests, and they alighted, and Elrond surrendered the scepter, and laid the hand of his daughter in the hand of the king, and together they went up into the high city, and all the stars flowered in the sky. And Aragorn the King Elisar wedded Arwen Undumiel in the city of the kings upon the day of midsummer, and the tale of their long waiting and labors was come to fulfillment. And so ends chapter 5. So like I said, that's when you. So one of my biggest issues with the Lord of the Rings adaptations was the amount of screen time Arwen had, the amount of importance her character was given. When you see just now, this is when you see her again. This is when you see her again. So nothing of the events in Two Towers transpired. That's pure fiction on Peter Jackson's and Fran Walsh's and Philippa Boyan's part. Right? So basically in the books, the last you see of her is when they depart Rivendell, and this is the first time you see her again. No, she had a really good agent. She had a really good agent, or Peter Jackson just... No. You could tell when there's like a strong female lead that a little bit of influence from Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyne, but Peter Jackson, you know, he's... in so many words, kind of a cuck. She never convinced her father to reforge the sword. Never convinced her father to reforge the sword. Pure fan fiction. Pure fiction on that part. So I think they did that. I think they did that with her character because the only real female characters that have, like, you know, presence in the story were Lady Galadriel and Eowyn. So. Oh, hush, gravy. But anyway, that ends chapter 5, so I'll be reading chapter 6 and 7 on Friday. You guys get the 6-7 jokes out now. And then next week, I'll be reading chapter 8 on Tuesday and chapter 9, the very last chapter of Lord of the Rings, next week from this Thursday. Arwen and Aragorn are kind of like in the when I say modern, I mean like the current iteration of Beren and Luthien. So Arwen represents Luthien. The love of, like, you know, between Beren and Luthien is Aragorn and Arwen. Alright? That's it. They're like JM answers it basically. Like Beren, Luthien. And so they're basically the unions of men and elves. It's pretty much what she represents. Like, you know, it's like beginning with Luthien. Beginning with Beren and Luthien. Luthien, I believe, was, if you look on J.R.R. Tolkien's gravestone and his wife's gravestone has Luthien on it. Like, basically, his wife, like, Tolkien's wife was Luthien to him. And on his gravestone, Beren. So. Don't get me started on Tauriel again. Yeah, don't get me started on that character. So yeah, so I'm saying, like, you know, it's like, it's very much Luthien's inspired by his wife. So, from that to Aragorn and Arwen, basically, that's the connection. That's the importance. So, but anyway. Alright, so tomorrow will be a YouTube stream that is where Stieg and I discuss our personal top 10 lists. We are discussing our personal top 10 films from 2005. After this stream, since it's still on the early side, I'm going to be going through the list of 2005 films to create my overall list, and then I'm going to narrow it down to 10. So yes, 2005 list for tomorrow, and then I'll be rather than doing the reading stream Thursday, I'll be doing the reading stream Friday. So no stream on Thursday. I'm going to relax Thursday evening because I have to get up on the early side Friday evening. I'm not going to stream the Gaming Awards. I'm going to be watching another channel reacting to the Game Awards, basically. So if you follow, I'll post a link because I have the notifications on. I'll be watching them react to it. Is it Rocking Gaming? Is that who's going to be streaming it? Yeah. So this right here, Gronking Gaming, is going to be doing a stream reacting to it, and I'll be watching this stream. Oh yeah, Nuck Nuck. The Nuck Nuck Awards, basically. Here is the link to that stream, upcoming on December 11th. So that's where I'll be. I'll be in that chat. So I'm not going to be streaming the Game Awards. I'll be living vicariously through this site. I know, but I support those guys. So I'll be watching that stream. So that stream right here that I linked. I don't know how long the awards is going to be, basically, but they're going to start their stream at 6:45 p.m. I imagine the awards ceremony itself is going to start at 7 p.m. Yeah, and you watch through that. Watch through the Gronking Gaming site. And give them a follow. They will be returning to streaming in 2026. But they post videos and so forth, so you can check them out. But anyway, yep, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. So again, tomorrow is the top 10 2005 personal list of top 10 2005 films. Thursday, I'm just going to relax. Friday, I'll be reading chapters 6 and 7. So that will leave 2 more chapters after that, and then The Lord of the Rings will be done. And yes, I was turned off of Silent Night, Deadly Night, that clip that was posted on X. So I'm going to be selling the seats for that as well. In 2005, I could find 10 reasonably good films, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure I could come up with 10 films that I've seen that I like in 2005. So, this year, no. This year, there were some good films, but no, I don't think nowhere near that I would put in to get 10. No, 2005. 2005, top 10. I will need to be in a state of desperation to put Revenge of the Sith on my top 10. Soul Assassin. I'm sure I can get 10 without adding that to the list. So, but on that note, ladies and gentlemen, have a good rest of your day or evening wherever you are in the world, and I will see you all tomorrow evening as we discuss our top 10 2005 films. Take care, stay safe, and peace.